Am I making my own smart home product? I guess you could say that. Am I making my own smart home product? I guess you could say that. Alright, so if you haven't been following along with this sensor so far, this is basically the third video in the series. A few weeks back, I made a DIY occupancy sensor, and you may remember it looked something a little bit like this. Basically, this combined a millimeter wave sensor with an ESP8266 for detecting if people were in a room or not, and allow you to run automations based on that sensor. The initial version of this board had a millimeter wave sensor only, so this guy here from DF Robot. And then in the next video, we upped it a little bit and we built this full unit, which also included a PIR, motion sensor for fast response, as well as a temperature and humidity sensor, as well as a light sensor. And we also upgraded the ESP8266 to an ESP32, which has Bluetooth on it so that you could do things like Bluetooth tracking for personalized automations. Well, from reading the comments on that video, lots of you guys said that you'd be interested in buying a ready-made or a pre-built version of that sensor, because this involved a lot of soldering and DIY, and that's pretty much what these are. So this is pretty much the exact same sensor as the DIY version, just in a much more compact and ready to go pre-made version that you just plug in and you should be good to go adding it to Home Assistant and get automating with it. So again, this guy features a millimeter wave sensor, a PIR that you can plug in, an ESP32 with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, a temperature and humidity sensor, as well as an ambient light sensor for controlling smart lighting. Thank you to BenQ for sponsoring this video. BenQ's GW series eye care monitors are designed to reduce eye strain during prolonged screen time through their eye care technologies, such as BenQ's exclusive brightness intelligence technology, flicker-free technology, and low blue light plus technology. Their brightness intelligent technology can automatically adjust the monitor's brightness according to the ambient light, which helps to deliver the most comfortable viewing experience. They also have various learning modes such as coding mode, which makes it easy to identify color when coding and filters harmful blue light for continuous use at the same time to reduce eye fatigue. The GW series also sports a USB-C port, meaning plugging in your laptop is an absolute breeze, with a single cable for display and 60-watt charging, especially handy if you're hybrid working, and it also sports multi-monitor daisy chaining through the display port. The stand sports height adjust, tilt, swivel and pivot, and is available in a 24 or 27 inch version. We also can't forget about one of their best features, the inbuilt noise cancellation microphone to help clear up background noise during meetings. Check out the BenQ GW series with the links down in the description. So directly on this PCB, we have our ESP32. You'll notice that we're using the smallest ESP32 module available with an antenna, and that is directly on the PCB, as opposed to using a standard off-the-shelf ESP32, which is a really good board, but it does have some extra stuff and some extra headers that we don't need. You can see how the size comparison of those two chips is a lot smaller on this board because we have built our own custom PCB. The other advantage of building our own custom boards is we're able to add the features that we actually want rather than having to make do with something that's off the shelf. For example, we have added USB-C to this board, so USB-C baby. We have added it to this board, whereas off-the-shelf ESP32s typically use micro USB instead of USB-C. I call out manufacturers quite often for not using USB-C and using micro USB, so I couldn't well not add it to my own product. So yeah, that one is here. You'll see USB-C is on the board. That was an important feature for me to have. We also have our temperature sensor, humidity sensor, and light sensor directly on the board too. They are nice and compact and they take up a tiny amount of space on the PCB and allow us to get those really fast and accurate temperature, humidity, and light intensity readings so that you can use them in your automations. So we designed this completely in-house. This was done by myself and my legendary dad. This is actually the first time that either of us had opened a PCB designing software or even heard of any PCB designing software. This is the first time we'd ever done it. He is an absolutely legendary electrical engineer though, so we were able to get going quite quickly with it, and we have learned a lot doing it since. I'm really proud of what we have been able to do here and actually really excited for you guys to check it out. There's actually only two components that we didn't design from scratch for this PCB. So the first one is a PIR. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we have the capabilities to design our own PIR. The other component that we're using that is off the shelf is the millimeter wave sensor. So millimeter wave tech is actually quite expensive, at least at the moment, and there isn't a whole lot of documentation out there for the moment. It's not as mature as some of the other technologies. There is more stuff coming out now, so that is why we decided to go with an off-the-shelf component like this DF Robot millimeter wave sensor. This is the same sensor that we've used in the previous build, so we know that it gets good results, and we know that it is accurate and reliable, and we know its capabilities. So that's why we're using it here. It's also more than half of the cost of this entire device. So that is why we made it removable. You'll see that it just slots into the top headers. So if for whatever reason this sensor did fail or happen to fail, you can replace it without having to scrap the entire board and buy a whole new one. You could just slot in a new sensor. As well as for upgrades, in case a new model comes out in the future, then you can simply drop in the new sensor and it will work with your existing board. So you'll see by manufacturing these boards instead of hand soldering them, you get them a lot smaller and more compact, and it's going to look a lot nicer in your house, a lot more discreet, and something that you'll actually want to have plugged into your house. It's also just generally a lot more accessible to those of you who don't know how to solder or have never soldered before, and this is a really good option. Both of them actually worked, they both powered on, you could program them, everything functioned as it was intended, so we were actually really happy for our very first PCB design that everything just actually worked. But we do have another prototype on the way with some of the fixes implemented that we learned from this board. The major change was that we pretty much redesigned the entire layout of the board to get better and more accurate readings on the temperature and humidity sensor. Pretty much the redesign was to accommodate and get better readings on the temperature sensor by completely isolating it so it was on its own, away from any other components, as well as building some isolation or shielding around the temperature sensor so that it wouldn't be influenced by those other components. And we will see if that has worked when the next prototype arrives. We also added some other good features onto the board too that are not present here. So we added a 5-volt header pin so that you can power it via a 5-volt power supply instead of a USB Type-C port. We also added a jumper on there so that you can select between the 5-volt input and the USB-C port so that someone doesn't try and power them from both and do some damage to the board. So that's just a little bit of protection. We also added a 3.3 volt output as well as 4 GPIO pins. The reason for the GPIO pins were that we obviously had some pins left over on the ESP32, so we thought why not break those out and let people use them to extend the board and add whatever sensors they want. Also, a lot of people were adding, can I add my own air quality sensor or my own carbon dioxide sensor or gas sensor, whatever it was, and there was no way I was going to be able to add all of the different features onto the board. So that is another good reason for the GPIO pins, is to let you guys expand them and extend them and do whatever you want by adding your own devices and your own sensors on here, so you can do that with the GPIO pins. Pretty much you can expand this and customize it and use it however you want. If you follow me on social media, so Twitter or Instagram, anywhere like that, you would have seen that I posted this last week and there were lots of common questions that kept coming up, so I thought, why not answer them in this video? So let's go ahead and answer some of the most commonly asked questions.
Will it be compatible with other smart home platforms?
So yeah, the plan right now is to have this made especially for Home Assistant using ESP Home. That way we can make it pretty much plug and play. It'll just show up in Home Assistant and work. That's the platform I use and the platform that I want to make this sensor work for. You guys know I love Home Assistant and everything about Home Assistant, so that's the platform we are primarily focused on. But I do want to actually add support for other platforms too. If you're an open source platform, then there is a good chance that we can make this work for your platform using something like MQTT, and we'll make that available as a separate install file that you can flash onto this device if you want to make it work for your platform. So yeah, I do have plans to do that. Nothing right now, but there is plans to do that in the future.
Okay, next one is, what's your plan for power?
So this guy will be powered by the USB-C port on the bottom, so that'll be a 5-volt USB-C port. The amperage is going to be really low, it doesn't take that much to power it at all. And also, as I mentioned before, you can... Let's start that one again. And as mentioned, we're also going to have a 5-volt header on here that you can power it via a 5-volt power supply of your choosing through the headers, and that will allow you to do more custom and more advanced things with it.
Could you make this LAN compatible or PoE?
So yeah, the plan right now, I haven't announced this anywhere, is that we're going to have a separate version at some point that is going to have an Ethernet port and also PoE on board. That is going to be a completely separate version. We're in the very early stages of actually getting that made. There's also some challenges around PoE because of the chip shortage. It's actually quite difficult to find PoE modules that are actually in stock and have a good amount of stock. So that is some of the challenges we are working around. So I do want to just be transparent and say that there will be a PoE version at some point, or there hopefully will be a PoE version at some point, but we don't have any final design. We don't have even a prototype of that yet, but nothing to show you just yet.
Can you confirm we still need to add the PIR and millimeter wave sensors on top of it?
So yeah, as mentioned, the temperature, humidity and the light sensor, as well as the ESP32 are already soldered on board. You don't need to add them yourself. The millimeter wave and the PIR are plug-in, so you just plug them in, but we are going to be supplying them along with this board, so you'll have absolutely everything you need to get up and running, and you don't need to buy anything extra. You already have them in the box, you just need to slot them in and you will be good to go.
A lot of the questions were about cases.
Cases.
Enclosure, yeah.
So the plan is we already are working with a designer to have a case made for this so that we can sell absolutely everything. Again, it'll come in a case, it'll look really good, and it'll be something that you can actually plug into your smart home and you can have it on show and not have to hide it away because it's some ugly PCB. So yeah, we are going to be offering a case as well as a non-case version. And we'll also try and chuck up the STLs for the case if you want to print them yourself. Maybe you already have a 3D printer, just so that you can print them yourself and you can save on having a case sent out.
2 words. International shopping.
Shopping.
Shipping.
So the plan is to definitely have these available so you can buy them anywhere and have them shipped to you. Obviously, the cost of shipping is going to depend on which country you're from and all of those logistics and different things. But yeah, the plan right now is to have these available so you can buy them anywhere and have them shipped right to your door.
This isn't even a question, it's just literally a comment I couldn't stop laughing at. In the words of Jeremy Clarkson, mildly moist.
Moist.
I think we're all in agreement that was mildly moist.
The most commonly asked question, I'm sure you can guess what it is. What about the price?
Price. So price right now, we are sitting at around £65, give or take a little bit. That is the price we're going to be aiming for based on the information we have currently. Obviously, as I mentioned, we still have another prototype to come and the price is going to depend on the cost of those components, etc., as well as we still need to find out information about import duty and tax and all of those boring things that are little cost, but they do all add up and they add on to the final price. So that is the price we're aiming for, is around £65 or so, give or take. It could go up, it could go down. That is the price we want to hit and we want to be able to offer it to you. Obviously, I would love to be able to give this to you for £2 or £5, whatever, really cheap, but there is a lot of expensive components go into it. And as I mentioned, the millimeter wave sensor itself is half of the cost of that. There's nothing we can do about that because we are sourcing it from DF Robot or from another manufacturer, and we don't have our own custom millimeter wave sensors. As I mentioned, millimeter wave sensor is quite an expensive tech, at least in comparison to some other sensors. So yeah, that is the reason for the cost. It's not a cheap product, but it does combine lots of different sensors into one unit. And I think this is pretty much the only sensor on the market currently that does everything that this can do. I think this is a really excellent little sensor.
If you do say so yourself.
If I do say so myself. And finally, where can you get your hands on these? So if you are interested in this product at the price mentioned with all of the features I mentioned, then I have put up a quick shop over at shop.everythingsmarthome.co.uk. You'll find that down here. And if you go over there and hit the notify me button, you can put in your email address and your name and how many you want to order. And that will basically alert you as to when they become available if you're interested. And that will also let me know how many orders to actually expect. Is it 100 or is it 1,000? That is going to give us a much better idea of how many we're going to actually have to produce. Please only actually register if you are interested in this at the current price point. It's going to give you a more realistic price, and it's going to give us a better idea of how many we need to actually fulfill. So if you are interested, head over to that page, put in your email address, and we will let you know as soon as they are available. All right, and that is about going to do it for this video. Hopefully it was at least a little bit interesting. Hopefully you're as excited about this board as I am. I am so excited to actually be shipping these out and get these into your hands, hopefully really soon. This is I think, in my opinion, I may be a little bit biased, but this is an absolutely fantastic product. And I don't think there is anything else out there like it at the moment, at least. So yeah, super excited to be actually shipping these hopefully really soon. Other than that, if you did enjoy this video, hopefully you learned something at least, or you found something interesting, please make sure to drop this video a like and get subscribed, and I will see you in the next.